Hello, everyone. We're just waiting for some more incoming people. We'll start momentarily. Welcome those who just joined us. We're just waiting for others to join as well.
Morning, Sarah.
Good morning. Welcome to other newcomers. I see a few more filtering in. We'll get started momentarily.
Get off.
Welcome to any newcomers. We are going to give it a little bit more time for others to join, and then we will start.
Hi, I'm Lauren with HS GovTech. Cameron is on his way.
But just a little bit more time. Okay, so let's get started. We won't be sharing a PowerPoint today. We'll just be talking through some different things. So just wanted to give a heads up on that for anyone who's calling in instead of on the internet. So good morning and good afternoon to everyone, depending on where you are in the country. My name is Sarah Mead, and I'm an associate consultant with Solemn, and we are supporting AFTO in the procurement for the SAFHER initiative, which you'll learn a bit more about today. So on behalf of AFTO, which stands for the Association of Food and Drug Officials. I would like to welcome you to the SAFHER RFP pre-proposal conference and thank each of you for participating in the call today. So a few logistics before we begin. This call will last 50 minutes and is currently being recorded. The recording will be posted on the AFDO website to ensure availability of the content to everyone, those who are on the call, those who couldn't make it, so you can watch later. So to start us off, I wanted to first ground us in the main reason we are here today, which is for the health and safety of the general public, and therefore the health and safety of food and other consumer products. We are also here to discuss the SAFHER RFP. So today's agenda will cover an introduction and overview of the SAFHER initiative and the RFP that was posted this week. We will also go over expectations of vendors and we'll have a Q&A portion at the end. When we get to that portion of the call, I will ask for questions to be shared through the chat. If we need clarification, we will ask for it. For any of you who are calling on the phone, which after this I'll do a little scan, we will reserve some time towards the end for you to share over the phone. So without further ado, I will ask Steve Mondernock from the AFDO Executive Director to lead off with an introduction and overview. So I'll pass it up to you, Steve.
Great. Well, thank you very much. It's very exciting to see all of you today. The Association of Food and Drug Officials dates back to 1896. We're a national nonprofit organization that represents state, local, territorial food protection regulatory agencies, including the agencies that regulate produce, manufactured foods, retail foods. We also work a great deal with some of our sister organizations that regulate animal food or feed, and also milk and shellfish. So we kind of have a long history in those spaces and working with those groups. We are very excited as we were one of the foundational groups and actually developed the concept of an integrated food safety system, which really is the concept of all of the public health folks working in food safety, whether it be human or animal food safety, work together from top to bottom toward the common goal and serve as a force multiplier and using the same information. SAFHER is really the realization of much of those goals that we've been working on since 1998. FDA, the Food and Drug Administration, has supported that initiative and included that initiative in much of their work since it was really developed as concept in 1998, and been a great opportunity to work with them. To give you a little background on how this project evolved, for those of you that are not familiar, several years ago, October of 2019, AFDO, at the request of both states and FDA, worked together with FDA to find a consistent, stable support solution when the legacy vendor that had developed a system that was currently in use by 20 states and I believe 26 regulatory programs or regulatory agencies in those states decided to leave the marketplace. Through a cooperative agreement with FDA, AFDO, in conjunction with AFCO, the Association of Feed Control Officials, developed a governing council of state representatives to lead this project and user groups. The governing council included representatives from all of the relative groups, along with the associations and tech leaders from the state government, along with a representative from FDA. In the fall of 2019, the governing council, with full support from AFDO and AFCO, completed a competitive procurement process that resulted in a selection of vendors to support those two systems. And since that point, we have been working with those vendors to support those systems. And we currently have 20 states participating in USA Food Safety and USA Plants, many of which with two separate agencies included. SAFHER really seeks to replace those systems, along with add additional states with similar needs into the systems. We are really looking for a system that also includes, is inclusive of local jurisdictions, but normally from a state down perspective, when I say that, as part of a state implementation. With SAFHER, we are looking for a system with an extended lifespan, extensive configurability, and significant levels of self-control at the essentially at the user or administrator level locally. With that, I will turn over for further information on the RFP to Kelly Isaac, our Chief Information Officer with AFTO, and let her begin discussion of the RFP. And thank you again for participating today.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today, just before this Independence Day weekend. I'm glad that you're here. We anticipate you probably have already started looking at the documents on the website and reviewing them with your team, and probably already starting to formulate ideas and anticipating responses. So that we're all aligned on the same page, we want to make sure that we get you on where everybody's working on the same timeline and expectations. So this information is all on the website and in the documentation. So if you don't hear me say it, please refer to the information you have on the website. So today is obviously our pre-response conference. It's just an opportunity for us to just kind of put some more clarity and color around what we're doing, thanks to Steve and the background that he provided. And then also just give some more details about expectations of what we're going to be doing. So when you do respond, you'll know what to expect. So again, today is the pre-response conference on the 18th, July 18th. That is the submission deadline for any questions that you may have as far as information that you've heard today, or questions that you have about the information that we've posted on the website. Please post those to the Box account. And the deadline is July 18th, 5 p.m. Eastern. So no matter where you are in the country, that is the time zone that we're using, 5 p.m. Eastern. Also, after the 18th, you have the opportunity to submit a letter of intent to respond. That deadline is July 29th, again, 5 p.m. Eastern. This does a couple of things. One, it lets us know that we should expect to hear from you, and also helps us plan ahead and schedule demos and plan for logistics and that sort of thing as we go through the process. And then after that, after the letter of intent, we have the next milestone is August 11th. That's when your responses are due. And we will, again, expect that by 5 p.m. Eastern. So, well, what happens after that? We're going to start reviewing all of the information provided by the vendors interested in responding, and we'll start planning and identifying those vendors who will go to the next round for demos. The demos are planned right now for October 18th through the 20th, and we will decide, based on the responses and information that we get on who will go forward to those next demos. We'll down select and identify those folks and contact them to prepare for those demonstrations. Then let's see. So that's the timeline. Now let's talk through what you've got on the website. So on the website, it has all of the documents. You'll see the RFP there. And you have a really good set of information. So just so you know, for those folks that are wondering where appendixes A through C are, they're inside the RFP. So don't worry, they're already there. We've taken care of that. So please do review the RFP. A lot of the information that Steve just talked about is in that document and in the appendices. Next, you'll see Appendix Appendix E and F, the business and technical requirements. Please take note these are spreadsheets, and these are spreadsheets that we expect that you will fill out. They're several tabs within these two spreadsheets, so take note of that as well. This particular part of the spreadsheet, the response is yes or no. And if no, it's an opportunity for you to say, well, here's something better, or here's a different way to think about it, or this might take a modification, or this might be custom development. So those are things that would be of interest for us to understand. Also, Appendix G, those are use cases, and these are use cases just so that provide more color about how our users might be interfacing with the system. These aren't prescriptive, and they're not intended for you to go away and just formulate your demonstration about this. It just intends you to help you understand these are the business processes that our users are going to be performing. Then there's some, not all, so do take care of that. Also next, Appendix H, vendor cost proposal sheet. There are 2 tabs on this sheet, and these we want to know what your anticipated costs are for the development of the solution, and also for the managed services. Please note that the managed services in this case is that it's a rate card that you would provide if we have something that's extra needed outside of the typical development for the SAFHER solution. So what I mean by that is if a state needs to have some kind of custom development or some kind of extra development that requires a different type of integration or something like that, what would that rate card look like? So we'd like for you to provide that as well, please. Also next, appendices I and J, these are from the government, FDA, and they are examples and background and information on the integrations you can expect. So when you see in the RFP that we're talking about integrations, these are a couple that you can think through and consider, okay? Then you're going to have 3 more attachments: managed services, evaluation process, and procurement provisions. Managed services is something that we're seeking to find to help do the ongoing support and maintenance as well after we have the development of the product, of the SAFHER solution. If you're wondering how we're going to be evaluating your response, Attachment B, proposal evaluation process, spells that out for you. There's great information in there about the evaluation criteria. You'll see how we're weighting everything. You'll also note that these areas are related to the information that we have provided you already that we're expecting responses from. So you'll see information about or see where we're scoring on the requirements, the technical requirements and costs and so forth. So good information there about how we're doing that. One thing to note is it is an iterative process, and we'll talk more about that. And then lastly, you'll have the procurement provisions for you to look through. So once we get through the scoring, that will go into and demonstrations, we'll go into we'll go into deliberating and figuring out who should be awarded. This could be one or many vendors based on the way that we're doing our procurement process. You might be wondering what that means. Well, what we're doing is we're taking a phased approach, as you'll see in the proposal evaluation process that's outlined in that document. What it does is it's allowing us a modular procurement that allows for the best solution to come to the table. This really allows AFDO to do a phased approach and allowing us to review the written responses first, then do demonstrations, and then work through the award and contracting. This also does allow for the opportunity for you, if you see something that maybe you are really good at and delivering and are interested in developing, but maybe there's something else, for instance, like operations and maintenance, that's something that you're not interested in. Maybe you bring a partner vendor to the table with you. If you decide to do that, which is okay, we do prefer that you have a prime and a sub relationship. We like to avoid having to manage multiple vendors. So that's something to think about as you go forward with your response. And so that brings me to the end of in the overview of everything that we are expecting for the RFP. Please let me know if you have any questions. I will turn it back over to Sarah and Brad now. Thank you for your time, and I hope you have a very nice Independence Day weekend.
Thank you, Kelly. Folks, this is Brad Smith. I work closely with Sarah and the rest of the AFTO team. That was our overview. Steve giving a little bit of background on not only AFTO, but the SAFHER initiative, but then also Kelly kind of talking about what is out there on the website in terms of the RFP, the process, the steps, the expectations, and starting to go a little bit more in depth there. So what we'd like to do now for the next 30 minutes is field as many questions that may be on your mind that have come up. This is not a one and done. As Sarah mentioned, we will be taking written questions. Sarah put in, it's in the documentation, but Sarah put it in the chat as well, rfp@afto.org. So you can send those in via email at any time between now and July 18th. But if we've got an opportunity, this is where we'd love to dive in. So with that, I'm going to start paying attention a little more closely to the chat. Looks like the first question that we had come in, has attachment D been omitted by design? Sarah, I might ask you for that one. Do we have an attachment D? Did we miss a letter somewhere along the way?
No, we don't have an attachment D, just ABC. It is.
All right. So there is no D omitted. Well, it's omitted because we didn't create one. So I think we're good there.
And I got a direct question. I can ask that to you. Can AFTO please further define the scope and expectations of the data conversion?
Could the individual come off who's asking that and maybe provide a little more detail about what they're thinking there, what their concern is?
Yes, this is Drew Pulak. I was just more interested in knowing what the extent of the data conversion is. It was pretty open and vague through the documentation. It just said that data conversion will be part of this, but it doesn't say to what level or to any parameters surrounding it.
Kelly, let me take a stab at that. So we would anticipate developing base data conversions for the key systems and key programs in USA Food Safety and USA Plants as part of this RFP. And then more specific data conversions may be necessary for one-off programs that are not necessarily core supported programs, or also for those things that are very specific to an individual state. Hopefully that helps, Drew. So I would anticipate the core program areas discussed, a core data conversion process should be developed at minimum from USA Food Safety and Plants, but then also, be thinking about in the state costs, what additional things might be required for their one-off programs or or also for specific customization fields, et cetera.
Good. I might recommend we, and for everyone on the call, some of these questions, if there's a need for further analysis by the AFTO team and other stakeholders, we will possibly we'll move those over to the written, almost like it's come up and we need a little more time to assess those. Or there's a level of detail that we don't want to just go off verbal. I think that's a great question, Drew. So we'll add that to the top of the written list and make sure we've got that more down pat. The next question that came in, Steve, I'll come back to you as well. The question was, you mentioned 2 vendors currently in support of the current platforms. Who are those organizations?
Acclaim Systems and Precise Systems currently support the 2 platforms.
All right. The next question that came in, In the RFP, page 11, tier 2 support is 24/7 with 30-minute response. Is this the same for tier 1, or what is needed for tier 1? Kelly, I'll let you field that one, but I suspect we might need a little bit of time to further analyze that. But Kelly, do you want to field that one in terms of time response between tier 2 and tier 1?
Yeah, actually, I'd like to take that one off and put that one onto the list that will provide more detail later.
Perfect. We will do that. Then the next question that came in, will the selected solution be required? Will FedRAMP, will it require FedRAMP certification? If so, does FedRAMP requirements apply to the solution? So it's a question around FedRAMP. Kelly, I'll probably come back to you as well. Have we considered that in terms of that from a classification level?
We have looked, again, the requirements do talk about FedRAMP, but for us to think about more about the classification level, we'll need to come back to you with more detail on that. So we'll add that to our list to respond. Thank you for the question.
Perfect. Let's see. Next one is on various spreadsheets, the limitation of MS Excel. Can additional MS Word document be provided to further explain contractor's response in vendor notes? Drew, you're our star pupil of the day because you're giving us good questions. Do you mind giving a little more context of your question about Excel, Word limitations?
Yeah, so on the requirements document, you asked for a response from the vendor on particular items, and it says, please explain, and you're supposed to put it in the column. But some of those also ask for diagrams and such. And so trying to put those in within Excel, we just asked if we could, reference a separate document so it's kind of readable.
So Drew, in terms of, that's more of just kind of a process and limitations. Let us consider that one. I think the concept for that was to keep it as clean as possible and probably push every response to keep it clean for our evaluation. There's always the possibility to say, further information is available, but let us take that one off. What we're trying to avoid, not only for the scoring / evaluation team, but also for vendors, is we don't want you to have to create the Great American Novel and become so burdensome. So let us consider that one. Right now, we're probably going to come back with direction to keep it as simple as possible, but it's always possible to say additional information is available. All right, our next one. In the RFP, you referenced 3 example states. Do you anticipate a pilot rollout that includes these 3 states? Kelly or Steve, I don't know which one of you would like to address that question about example states, pilot concept, etc.
I will begin at taking that under advisement or taking that question. First, we don't have a definitive concept on pilot, but our anticipation would be in our pilot, we would include a state that is very intensive in the human food programs and a state that's very intensive in the animal food programs. The states that are used as your example states are to some extent, while based on states, have some fictitious pieces to them to try to help others see how they might fit in. So they aren't real states and wouldn't be necessarily a pilot from that context. They may look very similar to real states though, and have many characteristics of real states.
And Steve, I'm reading between the lines too. Would it be fair to say that in terms of the rollout, programs and potential states in phases, that's all in a TBD and to be discussed, whether it be in the next phase for demonstrations, the phase after that for negotiations and collaboration?
Absolutely, and that would be fair, and we'd love to understand your thoughts on that as we go through it. I do think the one thing that we are somewhat, like I said, I think the human and animal food being the first 2 pilots is pretty set in our mind. And when I say human food, I should clarify that would mean probably 2 substantive areas within human food. Retail foods and manufactured foods would be the first 2 that would go simultaneously in that pilot, is our current thought anyway.
Got it.
though we welcome you to tell us we should do it differently. But that is our current thought. I see. Okay.
The next, yeah, well, that's okay. The next question talks more of ideal scenario in terms of approach and really around teaming. Is AFTO going towards a single vendor or a multi-vendor approach? Kelly, I might have you field that one.
Sure. So as I mentioned in my overview, we do welcome having vendors that are working together to bring us the best solutions. Should you have a partner vendor or vendors, we do prefer that you that someone takes the lead and as a primary vendor, so that we're not having to manage multiple vendors. But we are not certain for us to get the best solution. We are certainly not afraid of having multiple vendors provide the solution, but we do prefer that we are not managing multiple vendors, that there is a primary vendor.
Perfect. I'll give some more time for any additional questions to come in through the chat. Let me reiterate what our game plan is. And obviously heading into a long holiday weekend, we wanted to give plenty of time. So that deadline for written responses, July 18th, 5 Eastern. The intent is that as they're coming in, the AFTO team and stakeholders are addressing those. Most likely we'll have a response out roughly a week after the deadline. That should give us enough time as we're processing those and putting answers together to get it back out to you. We know how timely that is, and so we will be working as quickly as possible, but we want to make sure we're as consistent and concise as possible. Next question that came in, any demonstrations, meetings, et cetera, will they be held in York, Pennsylvania? Will York be the main hub for any UAT and or face-to-face meetings during the project? Kelly, do you want to take first stab? Might even ask Steve as well.
I might take first stab on this for you, Kelly, if that's okay. So we do anticipate demonstrations will likely be in the greater Baltimore area. That is our current thought anyway, absent something very unusual, but we would anticipate that region for demonstrations, not necessarily in York. We would be much closer to an airport. As far as UAT, et cetera, it will be, there isn't necessarily a main location there for meetings and et cetera. In all likelihood, what we would often do if there are meetings is look to a place that makes sense, if that makes sense. So it may indeed be somewhere, depending on who's engaged, the DC area or a major hub airport probably would be more likely, because we're likely bringing in state participants for that work too. So for simplicity's sake, we would not anticipate York being the central hub for any meetings or that sort of work.
And Steve, I think there's an underlying theme there of, in terms of project work, whether it's UAT, the development, you name it. How are you looking at that? How's AFTO looking at this, or all the participants, from a in-person on-prem versus virtual? Like, what's that impression right now in not necessarily uncertain times, but definitely in transition time?
Well, we anticipate a lot of this work to be accomplished virtually. I mean, I think that's just fair. In addition, a lot of our subject matter experts are across the country, whether that be state participants, AFTO participants, et cetera, are all over the country. So we do anticipate virtual whenever possible, but on certain key activities, we know in person will essentially accelerate the timeline. We are very supportive of doing that when we need to, but we also want to be respectful of not having to travel folks, yours and ours, whether it be the state and local folks or your staff. So, you know, we reserve that option, and there are times when that will make more sense. But for the most part, we anticipate most of the work to be accomplished virtually.
Perfect. Perfect. The next question I come in, is there a preferred cloud service provider? Kelly, any comments on that?
No restrictions at this time on a particular cloud service provider. We're looking to you to provide the best solution and architecture when you do your response.
Got it. And then the next one coming in was around target dates, overall schedule, et cetera. Do we have target dates in mind, or are there anything that's going to impact those that vendors need to be aware of? Kelly or Steve, which would you like to take a shot at that?
So I'll lead off, and if Steve wants to jump in, please do so. But I will say we do expect to start in January 2023. So depending on the solution and the scope, that will depend on, that will give us an idea of the target dates for a pilot and then a production go live.
I agree.
Yeah. And Kelly, the same question I asked Steve earlier. Probably fair to say that, or you tell me, during demonstrations and then a phase after that for collaboration negotiation, a lot of the schedule activity is a back and forth, meaning there's not necessarily hard dates. It's more of what makes the most sense based on the work that needs to be accomplished, the stakeholders involved. Is that accurate?
Yep, that's spot on. And I would say that as we do, whoever the vendor or vendors are, we do expect to have kind of participate more of an agile development process where we're able to see the value being delivered by the vendor. But that is definitely correct that this will be, the project schedule will be thought out more during the contract and negotiation phase.
Perfect. The next question came in from Luke. Luke, I'm going to ask you for a little bit more context. The question was, are there FDA, USDA, or federal protocols you will be mimicking? Probably need a little more context on the word protocols or what you have in mind and the concept of mimicking.
So I was just wondering, because again, I know that this is a state level idea, but it's still going to be kind of going across a lot of different states. So I was wondering if there was any regulations that the FDA or that other groups are utilizing that you guys are looking to almost kind of mimic, and again, just protocols that are already in place at a federal level that you want to again kind of have at a state level.
Sure. So there are many, but I would argue they're already pretty much the industry standard when it comes to the regulatory community. So, for example, the preventive controls part 117 of the CFRs, as it relates to food manufacturing, we would anticipate the retail food code being the standard as it relates to retail food, similar to CFRs as it relates to animal food. Go down the line, we would, essentially, what is the industry standard essentially in the regulatory area would be what we'd be looking at. And for the most part, there is either a model document, then when we get into milk and shellfish, we would be looking at the essentially the model ordinances, and those sorts of things would be the standard that we would contemplate. That we would expect to be the base at least. So hopefully that helps, Luke.
No, absolutely. Thank you so much.
Yep.
Okay, the next one, Addison, I'm going to ask you to come off mute. The question was, are there socioeconomic classification requirements that the awarded vendor must meet? Do you mind giving a little more context for that one? Addison, are you still out there? All right, we may skip over that one. I want to understand that could be read a lot of different ways. Sarah, thanks, Sarah. Thank you for putting some of the information in there. Sarah, is there anything in terms of the attachment D that you just want to do the voiceover for?
Yeah, so there might be some confusion on terms appendix and attachments, which may have been the reason why there's a question about is attachment D omitted. And essentially appendices are tied very closely to that first administrative and response information document. And they are, anything labeled an appendix is something to be responded to directly. Though I say that now, and Appendix I and J are simply references, but just follow the instructions in the administrative and response information and the checklist in there, and it will be very clear. But attachments essentially are all just reference documents. So there is no attachment D. And Appendix D, to clarify, is within the first document. So I apologize for any confusion. There's some navigation around whether you consider something an attachment or appendix, and we went this direction.
Thank you, Sarah. and we'll continue to field some questions. And Addison, if you can put some pieces in the chat, we'd love to be able to address yours too. One point that we have hopefully shared with many of you, and as well, not only in this call, but in our documentation, the AFTO website will be your source of truth for this RFP. That means checking it regularly for any updates, any additional documentation. Obviously, we will put this recording out there for all of you and others to look at and re-review. We will post the answers to questions. So that is your source of truth. And again, Sarah mentioned rfp@afto.org is your email address. Please use that. We want to make sure that you have all the necessary information in a as timely manner as possible. All right, I wish I had a great auctioneer's voice and cadence where I could say, all right, what else do we have? We'd love to field anything else that that comes to mind. Okay, I did get some information from Addison. And so, Steve, I might have you help us this one in terms of that question on socioeconomic. And it said, are there any set aside requirements that the selected vendor must meet? Small biz, women-owned, hub zone, etc.
There are not specific set aside requirements, but it is a preference that may be essentially beneficial or essentially bonus points on the score for those that do include such things.
Thank you. The next question came in. How many vendors responded to the RFI? Steve, is that something that you want to share, or I know we probably wouldn't go into specifics.
I'm trying to recall actually, and it was I will say this, fewer than 10. I can go that far. I can't give you an exact number without going back and looking.
We'll let the silence build for a little bit. Maybe we'll get the creative juices moving along. All right. We will assume that you have an opportunity to ask additional questions as they come up. You will field them to us. As we said, that next big deadline, the 18th of July, we will be working in the background to put answers together as neat and concise and helpful as possible. Our intent after that is to release it just as quickly as we can. Steve, go for it.
I did receive one additional question, and I will said I'm going to assume it's anything directed as a question at this point, and I think it was just accidentally sent to me. Would you be open to customer introductions as part of the demo sessions? I think when it comes to the demo sessions, we will have an outline, but the format will be your decision, and the amount of time will be yours.
Perfect. Thank you. Oh, I love it. We've got a few more that have questions have come. The question: do you want to create a common application for each program and then give it to other states to use it? Kelly, do you want to take a pass at that question?
Sure. I would say take it, review the requirements, go through the document and review everything and what we're proposing, what we're requesting, and then come back to us with your best solution. We do want to maintain and keep our costs low. And so however we can do that and have a nicely scalable and supportable solution is ideal. So I would suggest that's how I would proceed right now with that.
I think we can also add one additional bit of detail to that, Kelly. We anticipate there will be user groups within each of the community areas. So at each of the subject matter areas, what we have experienced in our previous work in the data systems, particularly in USA Food Safety and somewhat in USA Plants, was as the states work together, we ended up with great commonality. I just looked at inspections this morning and for 12 different states, and they were extremely similar for a program area. And we would expect to see that happen again, that when they work together, they tend to find the same solutions for the most part, with the exception of some state-specific requirements.
Right, thanks, Steve. That's a great addition. So just so for everyone's information, all of these requirements and business and technical requirements were based off of a lot of research and definition, process investigation with many of the states and in the various programs. So you will see a lot of commonality, and that's why we're looking for something that is more scalable and supportable and can handle the programs more agnostically than the just having a one-off for each program.
We've got a question that have come in around cost. Drew, I'm reading and I'm having a hard time kind of following the piece. Do you mind coming off of mute and give a little bit more clarity for your question on the costs?
Yep. On this cost spreadsheet itself, it has a line entry for costs of internal business and IT staff working on the project. When we responded or saw the response for the Q&A or during the RFI period, it said that we shouldn't estimate these. And so we're trying to understand if this was just left in or if this is something that we need to be responding to.
So Drew, the first piece is that I would not reference anything from the RFI, almost treat them as separate events. So any guidance, any documentation, Q&A, you name it from the RFI, don't assume that it's applicable over. So I would take the RFP directions that you have and treat those as your marching orders in terms of expectations and directions. Okay, we've got about 5 minutes left. We'll keep it open for a few minutes. But as we said, we will continue to field questions and give ample time. And you've heard from both Steve and from Kelly that the concept of this phased iterative procurement, there's definitely further conversations, information to share, particular parts of the project that can be co-collaborated on. And that's the intent. As you get further along, that collaboration just becomes stronger between AFTO and the selected vendor or vendors. Let's see. All right, we've got another one that came in. After common application development, the rollout preference and readiness would be difficult to estimate. In this case, how do we quote? Kelly, would you like to take a shot? It looks like we're asking for a question of how do they put their estimate together for rollout, implementation, et cetera?
I would say if take your review the information, take your best guess and make your we're interested in hearing like maybe what your recommendations would be on how you would see this as a what would be an ideal rollout and how that would look.
Got it. Sounds like it's vendor discretion to put the best approach together, explain what they've got.
Yes.
All right. And our next one, how do we minimize concerns or have safeguards put in place in this regard when existing support vendors? All right. Lensgen, can you come off mute and give a little more context? I'm following, but I got lost within the first couple of lines.
All right, just concern, hope you can appreciate it, that in a competitive RFP process, there were 2 vendors that already have access to systems, integrations, people. Have there been safeguards put in place to ensure that those lines of communication are open to all of us versus just current vendors?
Absolutely. Steve, do you want to address a little bit of that in terms of how we're handling the difference between the current providers versus this new initiative?
Yep. So I would just begin by, there are many systems out there that do this same work. So the current vendors probably don't have a whole lot of advantage because many of you already have developed systems in this market or already. Looking at the list of people, I can see several vendors that know this space very, very well and know what it looks like in the space. Secondly, we have put systems in place for the evaluation team so that they are essentially in somewhat of an isolation spot for the next several months while the evaluation does occur, along with backups should there be some reason why we have to substitute someone out for potential conflict.
Steve, appreciate the answer. Thank you.
Yep.
All right, and I'm going to keep very careful watch on time. The last question that came in, RK, it looked like, or the initials RK, it looked like it was a follow-up to the price question. We'll take that as a written to be able to respond back to you there so that we're given as clear as guidance. I suspect that we're going to go down a path of give us your best approach. This is not a one size fits all. We believe that every vendor is going to have a unique way to not only bring the right product, but an approach, how they price that. And we're prepared to be able to handle that. But we will take that one as a written item. Sarah, I'm going to hand it back to you to close us out so that we keep on time for everyone and their schedules.
Right. Well, that's it for information we're sharing with you all. And I guess we just want to, again, iterate our appreciation for showing up. Remember, this recording will be posted on the AFTA website sometime within the next few days, if not sooner. And any and all information you require is on that website. And a really key piece, I think, look at the checklist and Appendix D of the main RFP document, and that'll get you where you need to go as far as all pieces required. And any leftover questions, please email to rfp@afto.org. And I believe that is it, so we can call it the end. So thank you all again. All right, bye.